Okay, hello, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars that focus on empowering marketers in the financial sector with the insights that they need to lead their business's growth plans. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and a warm welcome to those that we haven't yet met in person. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lorraine Jekyll. I'm the managing partner at Free. We work with ambitious businesses who want to become a remarkable success story. We help them differentiate their brands, communicate with impact, and accelerate growth. And according to an insurance poll we conducted recently, standing out in the digital space is the #1 priority for insurance marketers right now. But with so many options and so many definitions of digital transformation, it's hard to know where to start, where to invest your budget, and what things will make the most impact most quickly. So last year, we went looking for a best-in-class digital partner with a stellar portfolio of work who had expertise across the whole of the financial services sector. We looked at some key touch points of digital transformation, user experience design, development of enterprise websites, APIs, apps, chatbots, and building portals. And we strongly believe that bringing together Free partners' market-leading insurance brand and communication expertise with Doc9's award-winning tech expertise will help insurance marketers stay ahead of the development curve by delivering agile, progressive, effective digital communication solutions to enhance and amplify your existing strategies and to create a complete positive brand experience at every touch point. Which leads me on to introduce our new digital business solutions partner, Doc9. So very warm welcome to Mark. Mark is the managing director of Doc9, a business he founded in 2008. He's built a team that is focused on creating simple financial experiences for a new generation of customers, and they impressed us with their second-to-none tech solutions and good old-fashioned tenacious work ethic. So great to have you with us, Mark. I know you've got some awesome insight for our listeners on how they can grow their businesses digitally. So let's get started. I'll be monitoring the Q&A tab. So if anyone has any questions, do pop them in and I'll go through them at the end. Anyway, over to you, Mark.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lorraine. And thanks everyone for joining today. I realise, first of all, it's one of the hottest days of the year. So everyone that's joined today, really appreciate it. And I think you should give yourself a pat on the back that you really do care about digital experience. The topic I'm going to cover today is how insurers can deliver a killer digital experience. And this is something that's quite close to my heart and Doc9's heart. So I've been around the insurance technology space for 15 years now and founded Doc9 12 years ago. And one of our first clients was actually an MGA looking to offer self-service and transform in the motor space. So before I get on to answering the questions today, first I want to spend a moment just talking about who Doc9 are and what we do. So we're a digital innovation agency that works in the financial services space. As Lorraine mentioned, we build websites, portals, chatbots, APIs, and really our mission is to help incumbent players innovate, adapt, and hit back at the startups. In terms of our client base, we work with small to mid-sized brokers all the way up to large multinational insurance companies, and then maybe some brands in other sectors you recognise here as well. And before I move on to the main topic, I first wanted to spend a few moments just sort of reviewing the competitive landscape. So as I mentioned, I've been around the market for 15 years. I noticed, I think everyone did, around 5 years ago, there was a lot of excited talk of big disruption happening in the industry, big change coming. So there was going to be an Uber of insurance that was going to radically transform the market. There was the rise of the Insurtech. So these were the kind of plucky, smaller startups promising to change user experience in the insurance market in a fairly rapid time. And these were really being driven by some other trends. So the first was the rise of connected devices. The second big trend was the maturity really of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and maturity also coupled with quite a rapid decrease in the price to use and users technology, and the barriers to entry becoming a lot lower. But you may be familiar with, I've seen this diagram before, the Gartner hype curve. This is really useful at illustrating how in lots of different sectors, when there is a wave of new technology and also some genuine reasons to use this technology, some real problems to solve, the innovation trigger there is typically a rapid meteoric rise of inflated expectations around how far and how quick an industry is going to change. So here it's called the peak of inflated expectations. Then when that change doesn't happen so quickly, you typically move quite quickly to the trough of disillusionment. So this is where people are writing off these technologies, saying, well, that was a fad. We can pretty much carry on as BAU. But what normally happens is in the background, this is when the real innovation happens. This is when quietly in the background, incumbents and those startups that have survived are implementing and utilizing these technologies to solve real problems and delivering real business value. And I think if we look at the UK insurance market, I think that's fair to say that's what's happening over the last 18 months, 2 years. So London, you may have seen this 6 months ago, has overtaken New York to be the largest fintech capital in the world by investment value. And because of this, the way people are experiencing financial services is starting to change. So the rise of the neobank and challenger banks are offering a very different level of experience to customers, and customer expectations are changing. Within the insurance market, well, aggregators are continuing their rise and have driven increasing commoditisation of some lines of business. And if we're honest, again, there's been a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of price, stripping out the value of products to match that price. But the other big thing that's happened recently, I guess, is COVID-19. And one of the upshots of this has been things that were said that weren't possible from a technology point of view. For example, everyone could work at home, have been proven to be possible, and companies adapted when they had to at fairly rapid pace. And I think there's been a view that, or certainly we're seeing, is that companies are using this to drive continuous long-term digital change. They've learned the lessons and they've shown what's possible when they could rise to the challenge in a short amount of time. So more broadly, experience is becoming a powerful driver of sales and loyalty. So if you think about people's experience of financial services, yes, there's some new challenges that are rising up and offering better levels of experience, but also users generally, when you speak to them, when we test with them, they compare the experience with a company against your Amazon or Apples of the world, and that level of experience is something that people are starting to expect for all their digital products. And there's been some talk of these companies actually entering the financial services market, and Amazon Insurance and similar, and we're starting to see them dip their toes in the market. And I think this is a potential kind of more larger risk for incumbents if they don't take experience seriously. So the question then is, how can incumbents deliver next generation digital experiences? So this is a big topic, and the answer to this will depend where you are and your company is on the digital transformation journey. But there are some common challenges we encounter with insurers. Some of these may be familiar when thinking about your own company. The first is legacy systems. So these do create real challenges, and there are obstacles to innovation in terms of legacy platforms that exist within a lot of insurers. Some where they've bought different books of business and integrated them on different platforms. But to be honest, nowadays, they can also be used as an excuse for inaction. There are ways of working around legacy systems, which we'll talk about a little bit later. If we look at personal lines, margins have been squeezed. As mentioned, aggregators are driving increasing commodification. And within commercial lines, a lot of times we speak to people, there's often a view that digital transformation won't impact their sector or their particular line of business because their product is so complicated. But that's actually resulting in opportunities to innovate being missed, and it's really leaving the door open to new entrants. I think more generally, if we look at it, there's often a level of organizational inertia. So many boards have had bad experiences and have been bitten with previous false promises of a new core system being able to deliver all the change they need. They do a big re-platform, it goes over budget, it doesn't deliver ultimately on what was promised, and this can lead to a reluctance to invest, and because of that, some short-term thinking. And return on investment, it can be really difficult for marketeers or people looking to innovate in digital to really evidence the likely impact on return on investment for improving digital experience. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 plays that, in our experience, have helped companies break free of these challenges. And obviously, every company is different, and you all have your own challenges. But I hope there's at least something in here that you can take away as a practical tip today and roll out in your organisation. So the first is all around taking your understanding of your users to the next level. So if you think about your customers, I'd ask the question, how much do you really understand your customers? And by customers here, it could be brokers, your users. So you could have things like user personas. If you've worked with an agency like Free Partners on a marketing campaign, as you've probably created some form of user personas. You may also have user journey maps. These are really useful if you want to map out the pre-sale, sale and post-sale touch points that people have across your different channels. That can be really useful. I'm sure you have some internal sales MI, at minimum a board row, but hopefully a bit more data around your customers. Normally then, or everyone really uses Google Analytics to give them additional data and in real time on how users are interacting with them as a business. But the problem here is there can often be an overwhelming amount of data, and to really utilize Google Analytics to the max it's almost a profession in its own right. So marketeers are typically layering on top of that tools like Hotjar and Crazy Egg, and what these do is give you in a more user-friendly way different ways of understanding in a bit more depth how your users are interacting with you as a business. So for example, you can have quite advanced analytics, heat maps rather, where you can see where users are looking on your site and interacting with the site. That's obviously incredibly important in terms of where you place your calls to action. And you can break that down by referrer source. So for example, if you want to see where people from aggregators landing on the site are generally interacting compared to your baseline, you can break that down. You can also use these tools to generate screen recordings. So these are actual recordings of your actual users using your real website or platform. And these can be used also to test the sales funnel, so your quote and buy journey. You have to be careful here to make sure that you're masking any sensitive data, but most of these tools enable you to do that. But the problem with that is you often end up with hundreds or thousands of videos, and getting some insights and understanding from that can be a fairly large task. And you don't often understand what's going through the user's head. You're trying to infer from these videos what's going through the user's head. So you can also use these tools to deliver better funnel and form analytics. So if you map out your sales funnel at a top level, you can see where there's leakage, a particular step in the process. These tools, if a particular step in this process is a quote form, a multi-step quote form, you can actually use these tools to identify at a field-based level where people are dropping off. So actually something, and I'll talk a little bit later about some common things that and approaches we take to stop leakage in the funnel. You can also use these tools to deliver polls, surveys and feedback, and almost get like a live NPS score about your customers. But the problem with all of that is that type of research is what users do and what they say they do are often very different things. So actually, to take your understanding to the next level, you really need to be doing usability lab testing, and this can be a game changer. We've seen this time and again with insurers that haven't done it before. So the principle here, taking that truism within user experience design, that what users say and what they do are often very different things. The idea here is to set up a controlled scientific environment to test your current journeys. So the way this is structured, you typically invite 6 customers, so real users into a lab. So these could be brokers or customers, and they each come for 1 hour. And there's 2 rooms. There's a viewing room, which has you as the client, and there's a test room, which has the person being tested, the customer, and a facilitator, which is typically one of our team. And in advance of this day, we would have identified and worked out with you, what are the key things you're looking to test? What are the tasks that you want customers, your users, to perform on these platforms? So the role of the facilitator then is to set the user the task. The sessions are all recorded, so webcam, eye tracking, the screen recording and audio. And once the facilitator sets the task, their role is to keep quiet, stay silent, and the user performs the task. But when the user gets stuck, which they'll invariably do at some point, or pauses, the role of the facilitator is to delve into why and really kind of question them and understand what's going through their head. What is the psychology of the user at this point? And this can be a game changer in terms of understanding your actual customers. And it really cuts through personal bias and personal opinion. Everyone has their own views on how how a journey should work or what it should look like. But this is a great way of kind of cutting through also sort of internal politics. So when you do your first lab test, we often advise, if possible, to get senior management to come in and view as well, because it can be a bit of an eye-opener. And when you have your actual customers or talking very, very freely about you as an organization and what the experience of using your platforms is like, it can be, you often get some quite eye-opening observations. And as I say, it's a great way of building momentum and understanding what your users really want from you as an organization. As sort of alluded to earlier, it's not just B2C. So we do a lot of B2B lab testing as well. So we help Arch build a portal, a broker portal, and this was tested with users during the process. And we do it on every project. So don't just think of it as a B2C thing. So we are actually publishing a book this summer called the Insurance Digital Transformation Playbook. And within that is a chapter breaking down the different types of user testing and also a how-to guide on how to get started to run your own first user test on your platforms. So as a kind of a pre-value add for those that have attended today, afterwards you're going to get an email with a link or an opportunity to download that free chapter, which I hope is useful. So from that user testing and that research, no doubt you have identified some opportunities for incremental, small improvements, but probably some kind of wider, bigger ideas on how you could really radically reinvent how your customers are interacting with you as an organization. So the question then is, how do you actually implement these? How do you make them a reality? So the second play is all about being nimble to beat the startups at their own game. And I'm going to give you some practical tips here on how to bring that to life. So the first thing, this slide, you may be familiar with the kind of traditional IT black hole where good ideas and innovations sometimes can get sucked into a vortex and never actually happen. And to be fair to internal IT departments, they have massive challenges managing business as usual, often sometimes under-resourced. They're grappling with legacy platforms. But there are now ways of breaking free of the IT black hole and delivering some rapid change pretty quickly. So before we get onto those, I think it's worth just spending a moment on some observations we see from those companies that are successful at digital transformation. They have certain characteristics. The first being approach and how they think in their mind. So they think big, start small, and build momentum. I'm going to give you some tips on how to bring that to life shortly. They're driven by data and research, not hunches. So foundation being user research and other research as well. They have adopted ways of working that enable you to prototype an idea really quickly, test them with real users, and validate them with users before you commit to developing an idea and investing in it. You have IT and marketing working in tandem. And again, going back to mindset, they're not afraid to fail early, learn and adapt. So how does that work in practice? Well, a good place to start, that's where you start, would be, if we think about if you do have organizational inertia and you have perhaps a little bit of cynicism around what level of impact improvements on the digital experience can have on the bottom line, well, actually a great way of starting is to use conversion rate optimization tools to enable you to sort of develop some rapid incremental gains to existing journeys and prove return on investment for the incremental gains. So how does this work? Well, conversion rate optimization tools enable you to test a hypothesis for an improvement with real users. So you might have had something come out of research that the call to actions aren't clear on the site. They're in the wrong position and maybe they're not highlighted enough visually. So you could run a test and say, you can set up A, B, and multivariate tests. So A and B would be your baseline example, your current experience versus B, an alternate experience. So this could be as simple as change a button from grey to pink, for example, or change the position a bit. So what you do is you use these tools that enable you really quickly and easily to set up a test where 50% of your users are seeing the existing grey button, 50% are seeing a pink button, and then you run this test on your actual live site. So what these tools do is they wait till they gather enough data to make it a statistically relevant judgment, and then you can prove whether the grey or the pink button converts more towards your goal. What's also really cool is you can test with different experiments with different personas. So, for example, if you've got quite distinct personas based on where they landed on, where they came from before they landed on your site. So, people that came from aggregators versus something else, for example, you can break down and test different tests with different personas. And again, the idea here, and the reason we're recommending this as one part of this play, is if you can focus on those small incremental improvements, it can really, we've seen this time again, start to build momentum and buy-in for bigger change. So if you think about within a conversion funnel, you might be able to add 0.1% of conversion here, 0.2% here, 0.4% here. When you add that all up and over time as well, you can start to deliver some actual meaningful business results. And you can use these tools on B2B platforms, your portals, as well as B2C. There are a number of CRO tools in the market. At the low end, Crazy Egg, the tool I mentioned earlier in terms of analytics. So for around $50 a month, you can get started doing some fairly simple A/B and multivariate testing. In the mid-range, there's a tool, Visual Website Optimizer, which I think you're looking at a couple $100 a month to get started. And then there's Optimizely, which is the kind of big daddy of CRO tools, which is an enterprise project and quite a fair bit more costly with more features. But typically, they all have enable you to run experiments like these. And I'm going to give you a few examples of things we've seen work within the insurance space for our insurance clients. So the first is call to action, kind of obvious one, but is it clear to users what the calls to action are? Typical experiments you would take is around or implement is around the language, the words used, the color, the positioning of calls to action. Content is obviously really important as well. If you think about your landing pages, is it compelling enough? Not just the content within your landing pages and your kind of pre-sale funnel, but actually within the funnel, are you explaining things clearly enough to users during the sales process? So often you will find during testing that there's a bit of wording that's come from underwriters perhaps, or a bit of language there that compliance have insisted on that users just don't really understand, and tweaking and kind of giving further information at that point can actually have a measurable difference on your conversion rates. Social proof is really important. So there's normally a moment of truth in the journey of buying insurance. So typically it's the quote page where people first see the quote summary with the actual price. This is normally a point in testing we found that users will open another tab, compare with competitors, and at this point they may be seeing competitors that may be slightly more cost effective. So this is the point where if you add in social proof, so if you've got great Trustpilot reviews, for example, or other things like that, it just adds an element of subconsciously or near conscious in people's minds that, okay, this might be slightly more this policy, but if I need to make a claim, they are actually going to pay out versus this other company, which is cheaper, but perhaps suspiciously cheaper. So that's a really good thing that we've found, which if you experiment with injecting the social proof at the right part of the funnel, can have a measurable impact on conversions. On a similar vein, trust indicators. So just building upon the social proof, if your company's won, I don't know, which best insurer for this category last year or similar, experiment with adding these in at key parts of the journey and see if that makes an impact on conversions. This is a bit of a left field one. It might not seem like it would make an impact on conversions, but we have found that particularly in the commercial space where you've got sometimes long proposal forms, if you give the user an indication of how long it's going to take to complete this, that can have, admittedly small, but an impact on conversions as well, and it's general good practice. So hopefully there's given you some good examples to start thinking about what could be applied to your business. But the foundation of this, of course, is the user research based on your particular sales journey. So, but I guess the key thing you might be thinking is, oh God, that's to do all these changes, that's gonna involve IT or technical or development resource. Well, no, actually, you can do all of these changes and these tools without involving technical resource. So here on this screen recording, the user is setting up an experiment on the Dotline website to test. Okay, I'm going to try a different heading here. Is this going to impact on conversions? So you can see it's all managed within the browser by a business user. So here you set up on the tool what the goal is for the test, because ultimately it needs to know what is your end goal so it can measure what did A or B contribute more to that end goal. So the end goal could be something obvious like getting a quote, but also it could be something that, more micro goals. So downloading a PDF, getting to a certain stage in the funnel, visiting a certain page, signing up for a newsletter. That's completely specific to your business. So hopefully at this point you have started to build some momentum for change. You've taken the learnings from the user research, you're adapting the user experience, incrementing what you've got to make it better for users. But there are probably some ideas that have come out of user testing and now momentum is building for some kind of bigger reimagining of how you work as a business and how your users interact with you. And the key thing here is you need to take risks. And the great thing is there are tools and methodologies now that enable you to minimize the impacts of experimenting and an experiment not working. So how does that work? Well, the big thing is, when thinking big, is you can now bring an idea to life in a prototype and test with users in 5 days. So I put the asterisks there, not because I'm now going to tell you it actually takes 6 years, but you know, this is normally focused on if you're looking to reimagine a particular funnel. So, you know, your online sales journey or the MTA process or my policy portal. If you're focused on one particular user journey, this could be 5 days. You can achieve a lot. But if you're looking to reimagining a whole company and all user journeys, you might need a couple of weeks. So how does this work? So the first thing is you have a pretty intensive week with the key stakeholders engaged in this process. So day one, we run a discovery workshop. So we're focused on absorbing and building upon the user personas that already exist. So thinking about your users, thinking about the challenges, like is there a problem to solve here? What is the problem, and is it a real problem? Then prioritization. So what are the key challenges and problems we can solve with this new interface? Day two then is focused on ideation. So coming up with ideas, sketching, storyboarding. So at this point you have a blank piece of paper. So you can almost think, if you had a blank piece of paper to reimagining you as a business, what would that look like? So sketching is a great way of starting that process. And apologies that I hear baby in the background. I've got a young baby in another room, so he's crying. So I hope it's not too audible on this. Days 3 and 4 are then focused on creating prototypes. So you can use prototyping tools now to bring ideas to life really, really quickly. So you can create prototypes that look and feel actually like a real website or a real platform or real portal, but they mimic functionality. None of it's reusable code. It just enables you to rapidly bring something to life as an idea. Then day 5, test with prototypes. Test the prototypes with users and document the results. So if you think about user testing earlier and just how powerful it is in terms of testing your current user experience, well, think about that, supercharged. So you can now, before you've gone too far down the line in terms of investing in an idea, within a couple of days, you can build something and test and validate that idea with users. And for a company, it can be a game changer to work like this. It enables you to take risks. It enables you to really innovate. And as an example of this, a few years ago, we had a mortgage servicer come to us with a reasonably big budget saying, okay, we want to build a customer portal. We went for a pitch process. We won the pitch. When it came to starting, we said, hang on a minute, actually, what you should do is start with a smaller project. Let's start with following this process, rapid prototyping, testing with users. What we found actually in the user research and the testing was that users, their demographic of users and their cohort of users kind of uniformly said, we're never going to use this portal. We don't want to use it. And the features that you want to develop that are no interest to us. So that was great, great overall for the users. They're not going to get some functionality hoisted upon them that they're not going to use. Great for the company. They've saved themselves investing in a fairly chunky portal delivery project. For an agency, I guess it was a little bit an interesting one. Ultimately, we want to do what's right for the user. So I guess that was a good result all around. But yeah, just to give it, that's a good example of where, if you've got some innovative ideas about how you could reinvent yourself as a company, having the evidence of this could either prove users aren't interested in this, but also more likely you can have some compelling videos of users interacting with these prototypes that you can then take to board level and really justify further exploration of these ideas. So as an example of what's possible, so we worked with Vodafone last summer, designing and building their insurance post-sale experience. And this was a slightly larger project. It's around three weeks in terms of research, design and prototyping. But just as an example of a large incumbent organization that has adopted these ways of working. So it's not just startups. And just to manage expectations as well, you don't have to be a large multinational to utilize these processes. You can achieve a lot in experimentation and prototyping with a budget of 5 to 10K. So the third thing then is, okay, so you've hopefully validated and created some good ideas on how things can work in future for your organization. You validated with users. The third thing then is to actually, make them reality. And probably some of these ideas will involve an element of self-service and automation. So if we look at this slide, and going back to the perennial question around legacy, so I'm sure your back office systems don't look like this, but some instances not far off in the banking world. And but I guess legacy being an excuse to not offer a self-service, it just doesn't cut it anymore. The new way of developing systems isn't to develop a monolith system that does everything. You can work around your legacy platforms by developing middleware and smaller platforms to deliver particular functionality. And that is actually the more modern way of doing things nowadays. The monolith system idea, re-platforming into new systems can do everything. People have seen that doesn't work in reality. So yeah, from our user research, there are some general self-service expectations that we see, no matter what the client, no matter what the line of business. So these are the various stages of the journey for users. And you might be saying, okay, look, we've got a commercial product. It's so complicated. It will never be instant quote buy online. Okay, but that's fine. I'll take that face value. But actually users expect, if you are going to be manually underwriting a quote, the acceptance and the inception of that can be digital. And customers are going to start to expect that. If you're asking for ID or documentation or other things from users, that should be a digital process. And going back to that point of the world changing post-COVID, I was asked to provide some details the other day, some bank statements. The bank statements, the paper ones, are all in the office. I don't go to the office at the moment. So just an idea about these digital platforms are being used now because people have to adapt to accepting different things. Also, if you think about the experience of insurance, so we have also done, when we start engaging with a company, where we test the end-to-end journey. What we often find is, sometimes marketing are owning the pre-sales and sales journey, and IT and operations are owning the kind of post-sale experience, my policy portals, etc. And often what we find is there's a bit of a disconnect between the level of experience that they get pre-sale and the level of experience they get post-sale, at least from a digital perspective. But actually what we find users saying is, well, my experience of insurance starts the minute I buy the policy. Why is the experience now completely different digitally when, if I want to log in and get access to my documents, make a midterm adjustment, submit an online claims process, at least the first notification, get quick answers? You need to kind of think about holistically the entire journey. And again, I think one of the early slides we talked about user journey mapping. That's an incredibly powerful tool to identify the weaknesses you have in your current journey that can be improved. So I'm taking as a kind of baseline, these are common things we see across most lines of business and most organizations, companies, services that people should be implementing a level of self-service. And these, and there are ways of working around legacy, which I'm happy to talk about separately because I've only got a short amount of time left. What I would say is actually we're seeing, and I would pose a question to you all, could a chatbot help you? And some people may be rolling their eyes at the moment. Chatbots, they were all the rage 5-6 years ago. They never really took off. And again, if you think about the Gartner hype curve, actually now in the background, real innovative ideas are starting to be rolled out, in the real world, utilizing chatbots. And I think I'm going to give you 3 examples. Now, first of all, before I do, just to clarify, what is a chatbot for those that aren't aware? A chatbot fundamentally enables customers or users to ask questions in live chat, human language, and get a response back. And instead of having a human typing response on the other side, it has a bot. It's automated by a computer. How do these work? Well, they're powered by artificial intelligence and a subset specifically of AI called natural language processing. And what these enable the computer to do is understand the intent of the question from the user and provide an automated answer. And the typical use cases in financial services include, at a base level, automating the answer of frequently asked questions, answering account-specific questions. So it could be, what's my renewal date, or can you give me my documents, or I want to make a change, for example, MTAs. And the general principle is to automate repetitive inquiries and tasks. So that could be repetitive tasks throughout the funnel, not just post-sale, but pre-sale as well, and to really free up your team to focus on high value work. Key thing, chatbots are multi-channel, so they can be integrated with your website, your chat platforms, and actually if you integrate them with Facebook Messenger, they can be integrated directly with your Facebook page to answer queries, voice assistants like Alexa and Cortana. And the benefits, well, there's a number of benefits. For a well-executed chatbot, it can deliver a much better experience for users. So users can get an instant response 24/7, 365 without having to pick up the phone or look for answers on your website. But internally, actually, from an operational point of view, and also if you think about sales efficiency, you're really freeing up human beings to focus on those higher value conversations. And I'm sure that within every organization, if you spent some time with the call center, which we often do as a starting point, and documented the inquiries that are coming through, there will be an element of these that really don't need human intervention and could be automated to give the user a better experience, but to free up your agents to focus on more high value activities. Cost efficiency and scalability, well, chatbots don't get sick, they're always available, they're highly scalable, and I think they've shown their true value during COVID-19. I'll give you an example in a sec. And we had, well, for our mortgage and banking clients, we had unprecedented spikes in calls and activities during COVID-19, people asking for payment holidays or concerns, etc. And those that had utilised bot technology kind of dealt with that a lot easier because these are highly scalable. There's always no limit to the amount of inquiries that they can handle at once. And even if you start small and launch just an FAQ bot, for example, the second you launch your bots, you're going to be getting a real-time, really detailed understanding about what your users want from you as an organization. This can be really invaluable, not just for the team looking to optimize this bot and continually improve it, but also other areas of the business that can use this data. So you're going to hear in real time, collecting data, of all the queries and conversations. So some examples of this in the real world at the moment, as I mentioned, COVID-19, these are well utilized nationwide. Lots of chatbot, TSB did similar. An example in the financial services sector and insurance specifically, AA in Ireland launched a chatbot to sit alongside their quote funnel. So I thought this was a different, interesting example that might be pertinent today. So this is focused on B2C customers buying their insurance. And what they found was that the bot was, by integrating the bot into the funnel, enabling the user to ask questions along the way, and it understood where they were in the quote funnel. That led to an 11% increase in quote conversions. And also, they were decreasing the agent handling time. So if you think about scalability and efficiency, this is delivering real world impact out there. You may be thinking at this point, well, that's all well and good, sounds good for B2C, but we're a B2B business, we're complex, it couldn't really help us. Well, actually, two of our most recent projects have been with B2B brands that are looking to utilize bots to help them as an organization. So one example would be Kensington Mortgages last year. So they're a specialist mortgage lender, and we helped them deliver, well, after doing some research and finding out that a lot of their inquiries coming through to their call center and their BDMs were repetitive questions around lending criteria. Is, as my customer going to be a right fit for you as a company? And what we spotted here was an opportunity to use bot technology for users to ask these questions automatically. We're working with some other lenders at the moment on similar projects. So again, this is a good example of, it might not be hugely interesting to everyone today in terms of that particular example, but B2B usages, the non-obvious stuff. So are we going to get rid of advisors completely and have it all done by robots? Probably not. But actually, and now that excitement's died down, there are probably particular things you can think about in your company. What are the queries that humans are answering that really shouldn't be? And chatbots is a great way of starting to kind of get more efficiency on those. So, is a chatbot right for your business, and how could you build one? So yeah, I'm rapidly running out of time here, and it's a big topic. So helpfully, we did a webinar a few weeks ago, half an hour deep dive into this, looking to arm people in a bit more details to identify and validate use cases, an overview of the platforms and indicative costs and processes and how you build one. There's a link here. It'll also be included in an email that comes out after following this webinar. If you're interested, take a look at that. So some final thoughts. I'm conscious I could talk all day on this topic, but have to pick out some key plays for you today. Digital innovation really is being accelerated in the wake of COVID-19. We're having conversations that were on the back burner from last year, now suddenly coming back into life, where companies are realizing that, digital services build resilience, and the world is changing, and now is the time to really future-proof your organization. From a process point of view, hopefully it's come through sort of loud and clear. The old ways of designing and building projects don't work, and you need to kind of radically rethink how you approach ideas and ideation and testing ideas internally. So start small, deliver rapid incremental improvements using things like CRO tools, and build momentum to cut through the cynicism. Just to sort of reinforce again, the post-sale experience, including claims, is just as important. So if you think you might have a finely tuned brand message, talking about the great experience you're going to give to your customers. Well, actually, customers will only remember the last moment of truth of the organisation. The last moment of truth could be a pretty poor time trying to get access to some documents or make a midterm adjustment, or claims experience. That's just as important. Legacy systems really are no longer an excuse. There are solutions out there to break free of these. And have an open mind. If there's one thing you do from today, I really would recommend run a usability test for your users. You may be surprised by some of the results. So just before I wrap up, for those that have attended the webinar today, I've blocked out the 6th and 7th of July, offering free 30-minute consultations with myself. And if you want to book a slot, we can discuss your challenges, your roadmap, let's get an understanding of your business, your desired outcomes, and I'll offer you some advice based on my experience, but also .9's experience in the sector. So there's a Calendly link below where you can log on and book a slot. And I think that is my slides. So yeah, thanks again for everyone for attending. I think we're going to move to a Q&A session with Lorraine. Hopefully we've asked some questions along the way. So we'll pass back to Lorraine.
Great, thanks ever so much, Mark. That was really interesting, really useful stuff. And it's so great, particularly for us to see so many ways of fulfilling your brand promise in a digital environment, but also really enhancing that post-sale experience. So yeah, thank you ever so much. Right, so we have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to keep this to 4 if that's okay. But please do feel free to email either Mark or myself if there's anything in particular that you want to know that hasn't been answered. So first, Mark, are you able to run socially distanced user test labs, and how does that work at the moment?
That's a great question. So in terms of user testing, along with usability labs in person, we have always offered remote testing as well. Actually, with Arch, their users were in Australia for that portal we developed for them. So at the moment, we're running remote user testing. It works in the same way. The only difference is you can't be in a viewing room, so you get the videos after the fact. So you work with us in advance, create the facilitation guide. One of our team works over Skype or Zoom or similar, runs a test as they would normally, records it, and provides the recordings afterwards. So kind of nearly as good, but that's the best we can do at the moment. Hopefully later in the year we can get back to normal.
Okay, brilliant. And what are some of the examples of things you've learned from previous user tests with insurance companies?
Cool. So in talking in general terms, I think you'd be surprised at some of the obvious stuff that comes out of user testing. So for example, from an operational point of view, one of our clients had a lot of call center calls coming through around how do I get access to my account? How do I register my policy portal? How do I reset my password? And they actually had this functionality, but it was really like expertly hidden in their site. So we identified an opportunity in user testing actually after that to just highlight those features more prominently on the homepage, and that had quite a meaningful impact in efficiency in terms of dropping off those unnecessary calls. So that's kind of almost might seem like a stupid or sort of puts a perfect example, but those things can make a big difference. I guess another great example, we worked with a large global health insurance company that weren't the cheapest in the market in terms of expat health insurance. And one of the things that came out loud and clear was their product was much better than other products, but it wasn't communicated at all, and people were dropping off and looking at competitors. And what we found was that there was actually loads of really useful material they were giving to users post-sale. We did an experiment to bring some of this advice. So if you're moving your family to Australia, for example, and you want to, you're worried about your health insurance requirements there, giving some of that really insightful advice and information up front did make a difference actually in conversions. So those are two of the kind of some different examples, I think I would say.
Okay, brilliant. So here's another one. We can control our website, but the sales funnel and policy management are out of the box part of our system, and we can't change these. How do we improve the experience of these elements?
Cool. Yeah. So that's again a fairly common thing where you might have a core system that offers an out of the box quote and buy journey. So you can actually integrate these conversion rate optimization tools I mentioned earlier, like Crazy Egg and VWO, into these sales funnels. And that's often a good way of experimenting and proving the point of whether a change will make a difference. And then ultimately you have to deal with that as a change request to make them embed that change. Another thing people are moving to is, a lot of these out of the box systems they're quite limited in terms of touch optimization and mobile user journeys. Actually, what a lot of people do now is plug into the APIs of the system, deliver a lightweight new application on the front end plugged into APIs, and this enables you to really reimagine the user experience.
Okay. So last question then. You didn't talk about claims a lot. You did a bit, but obviously not a lot. How do you see this process being changed by technology in the future?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think in terms of first notification of loss, so we've seen, particularly in motor, the rollout of apps that enable to capture if you're in a motor accident, pictures, GPS location, video, capturing data for that first notification in a really simple and easy way. So we're sometimes involved in that part of the process. Actually, I'd say there's a company we used to work with called a website called 360GlobalNet, who have actually taken those principles of utilizing mobile devices to reimagine actually the entire claims process and shorten it down using technology. So I think, from terms of what we do, we're focused on improving the first notification, but there are other platforms and products out there that can augment your core system, like 360GlobalNet, that I think would probably revolutionize that journey a bit more in future.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, well, that's about all we've got time for. Thank you ever so much for attending. We'll be sending out a recording of this session within the next 24 hours. There's also, there will be a Calendly link in the email to allow you to set up your consultation with Mark. And if you found this webinar useful, we are running a series of them, so do follow our LinkedIn page for more details, and we'll also be sending out invites by email over the next few weeks. So I think that's everything from me and from Mark. Time to get out and enjoy the sunshine. Thanks ever so much. Okay.